Okay, so today we are going to do my personal review of the Chainsaw Man movie. The first time I watched it, I felt like I wasn't as invested because I had the initial feeling that Rez was using Denji for the whole time. But once we got to the end of the movie, spoiler alert, and we found out that Rez did genuinely have feelings throughout the movie, and she had to tragically pass away. And then I was like, damn, man, maybe she really did have feelings from the beginning. But something I did really, really enjoy was the opening music. I just felt like, just like the rap with like the upbeat, and how like I felt like the song. It's so catchy, and I feel like it's such a good song, and that was a really good part of the movie. But once I saw the ending, and I felt motivated to watch season 1 again after the movie, and then I watched the movie again, and then I realized, damn, the first part of the movie with like the slice of life, the first time I didn't really feel as invested, but the second time around I felt like it was much more meaningful, because I knew that Rez did have feelings for him throughout, and I feel like the second time you watch it, I was able to pick out like the times where she was more conflicted, and I felt like that made the tragedy even more intense, as well as, you know, the feeling of love and all that stuff. And then afterwards, when we got to the fight scenes, man, the first time I watched it, it might have been a little bit chaotic, so especially with the Typhoon Devil scene. But for the second time, I felt like everything was much more clear to me, and I could follow everything, and I could just appreciate how amazing the sound design was, and also the voice acting, as well as the animations. And then just everything all around was so much better the second time I watched it. I don't even know what happened the first time. Maybe it was because I was eating snacks, and like that like took away my attention, or like I was just out of it or something like that. But a lot of people enjoyed the movie a lot the first time around, and I didn't really get that at first, but afterwards I can definitely see like how amazing this movie is. And enough with the glazing. So there are some interesting topics that were brought up that I felt were really impactful. The first one was the symbolism, or the idea of the city mouse and the country mouse. Basically, the city mouse is able to live a good life with good food and something, but they trade off being killed by humans or cats. While the country mouse doesn't get the good food, doesn't get all that extra worldly rewards, but they're able to live a safe life. And basically, I really wanted to understand what this metaphor meant, and my conclusion was that it had a meaning that was tied to like life in general, as well as the meaning tied to romantic relationships. So basically, for the city mouse versus the country mouse in terms of life, I feel like the city mouse represents the person who chases worldly desires. For instance, they chase fame, money, and all that stuff. But the problem with that is that you risk losing a part of yourself, where, in the sense that, number one, you tend to be overworked, and then number one, you tend to be overworked, or you lose a sense of yourself, where you're not really chasing your true values. In comparison with a country mouse, you're not really chasing those worldly desires. However, you're able to live a life where you feel content with where you are, while you can also do things that give you a sense of fulfillment and happiness, true happiness. So I think those are the two contrasting factors. And I think right now Denji's values are very simple. He wants to live a good life, and in his eyes it means having good food and stuff like that. But again, like when he meets Rez, I feel like he gets that sense of deeper values that he's never really experienced, and that can really help him shift into wanting to become the country mouse by the end of the movie, where he's willing to run away with Rez. So yeah, I think this relates to real life, because I feel like a lot of people today can relate to being overworked, or feeling just a sense of emptiness in their journey, Whereas I think the Country Mouse gives you a different perspective where you can think of different alternatives to what you truly want and what you want to achieve. Now we can move on to the romantic metaphor for the Country Mouse versus the City Mouse. I feel like the City Mouse represents a relationship that's built on excitement, where sure, you get those deep feelings or those very intense early feelings. However, if that's what you solely rely on, it's going to eventually implode on you. And I think that's like beautifully connected to, Rez being the bomb devil. Ultimately, when Rez So for the City Mouse, when you rely on intense feelings, I think it's more likely that in the end, a relationship will implode and end. And I think it's also really ironic that Rez is the bomb girl. On the contrary, with the Country Mouse, if you have a relationship built on, if you have a relationship built on security and safety, it's something that might not be as glamorous, but will more likely be lasting in the long term and have a deeper sense of fulfillment and connection. I think I realized why Denji and Rez felt way more impactful compared to Makima is because Makima's relationship to Denji is very conditional, where she does all the right things, but there's just a feeling that Denji is being used, and I think he can almost sense that, and I think he does acknowledge it throughout the show and the movie. But on the contrary, with Rez, while it's true that she was using him, it's also true that it's almost like they naturally matched each other's quirkiness or freak, and then therefore it felt like their conversations were more natural, especially when Rez asked about if he valued the country or the City Mouse. I feel like that was a moment where you felt like genuine connection, and there were moments where things felt forced, where things felt genuine, and I felt like those moments where they connected with each other, it was like a seed that could have built into something long term, where it could have built to something long term, but it's almost like it's almost a tragedy that things never came to fruition. And yeah, and something I was really interested by, even though I didn't understand, was in the end of the movie when Makima said her version of the Country and City Mouse. She talked about how she actually enjoyed the City Mouse better, but she kind of said it in a sadistic way where she helped her friend with crops in the past, and basically there would be mice that could have like ruined the crops. So then they had the dogs or something hunt the mice, and she says she found enjoyment in that. So it's almost as if she's saying that in times of security and safety, she almost likes to create chaos. And I feel like that's kind of evil, because I think that's like the purest form of evil, like genuine trying to do bad things. And I don't know what her intentions are. I do know what her intentions are because I did end up reading ahead in the manga, but it seems as though I don't even know, man. I think it's really like interesting that like when like some people do bad things, but in their mind they're doing good, but some people don't care if they're doing good or bad. All they care about is creating chaos. And I think that's kind of like that's a really like scary way to put it, but it is very interesting to see the character she is, and it's very, very interesting. And also while I was watching the movie, I noticed like Rez in multiple attempts tried to see if it was possible to really start something with Denji, but once she realized that Makima was never going to allow that to happen, and as well as was never going to happen, it's like a tragedy how in the end she fell back to, you know, the country mouse. Or like, so we knew that like Rez, like the whole time, or we knew that Rez in the beginning was acting under ill intentions, but it's really sad how once she started to develop feelings, a genuine connection, that she realized that Denji like did not really feel the same way, and also the fact that even if he did want to, that Makima would not allow that. And especially in the end, it's so tragic because like both of them wanted to run away, but she knew that it wouldn't have been possible, and then she basically put an end to, you know, any hopes or dreams that he had. But especially in the very end, when she got stopped, man, that was so sad. But yeah, that's about it. See ya.